I've been told that a man's worth is measured by how he stands in the face of adversity. If that's true, then my worth was tested the day I learned I was dying. It wasn't a quick death, not the kind that takes you in your sleep. No, mine was slow, creeping, cruel, a rare genetic disorder that was eating my bone marrow like termites in a hollow beam. Doctors told me I needed a transplant, and without one, I'd be gone in less than a year. I wasn't afraid to die. I've stared down worse. What haunted me was how I'd be remembered if I'd even be remembered at all. See, my family and I, we hadn't spoken in over 15 years. Not since my brother Adam stole the company our father built, and with it every ounce of pride I had left in our name. Adam didn't just take the business. He took my position, my employees, my life's work. And then, like a final kick to the gut, he spread the kind of lies that make people turn their backs on you without asking for your side. My mother believed him. My father stayed silent. And me, I walked away. No yelling, no lawyers, no fights, just silence. I rebuilt my life far away from them, starting a small consultancy with nothing but my name and the last $5,000 in my account. I never looked back, and I swore I'd never need them again. Until the diagnosis, the odds were slim. Finding a compatible donor was like finding a needle in a burning haystack. And as fate would have it, that needle was Adam. When the hospital told me, I laughed. Not because it was funny, nothing about it was, but because the universe had a twisted sense of humor. The man who'd gutted my life was now the only one who could save it. And I knew Adam well enough to understand. If he helped me, it wouldn't be out of love. It would be because he thought he could get something in return. That was the moment I made a decision. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't plead. I would give him the chance to show me who he really was, and I'd be ready when he did. But here's the thing Adam didn't know. I had something he wanted even more than I needed, that transplant. I'd kept it quiet for years, buried under layers of silence and patience. And if he played the game I thought he would, then I'd walk away with my life and his. The day we finally met again, he didn't even say hello, just smirked and said, "Looks like you need me now, little brother." I smiled back, because he was right. And because it was already too late. The morning after Adam's smug little greeting, I sat in the sterile white of Dr. Meyer's office, the air humming with that low electric buzz from the fluorescent lights. The sound reminded me of the old break room in my father's factory, a place where men worked themselves raw because they believed in something bigger than themselves. I had believed in that once, until Adam burned it to the ground. Dr. Myers slid the lab results toward me, but I didn't look at them. I didn't have to. I could read the truth in his eyes. "We've confirmed the match," he said. "Your brother's a perfect donor." The word perfect lodged in my throat like a splinter. He talked about probabilities, surgical prep, recovery times. All I heard was the sound of a clock ticking, not the one on the wall, the one counting down the days until my body gave out. I left his office with a folder in my hand and a war in my chest. I'd spent years building a life without Adam, without my family, without the poison that came with them. Now my survival hinged on him, the one man who'd happily watch me drown if it meant keeping his shoes dry. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling the familiar burn of old anger trying to pull me under. Adam had stolen the company my father and I built side by side. He'd smiled in my face while gutting me from behind. And the worst part, I let him. I let him because I thought walking away was strength, because I believed starting fresh somewhere else meant I was free. But there's no such thing as free when someone else is still holding a piece of you. Lisa, my wife, found me in the kitchen at 3 a.m., nursing a coffee that had long gone cold. She leaned against the counter, watching me the way she does when she's trying to decide if she should comfort me or let me fight my own battles. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That I'm not going to beg him," I said. "If he gives me that transplant, it'll be because it benefits him. And when that moment comes, I'll be ready." She didn't press, she just nodded, her eyes steady on mine, and in that silence I knew she understood. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about reclaiming something Adam had taken long before my marrow started to fail. The next morning, I called Adam. His assistant answered, a chirpy voice that had no idea she was speaking to the man her boss had thrown to the wolves. She put me on hold, and after a long minute, Adam's voice came through. "Little brother," he said, drawing out the words like a cat toying with a mouse. "You've got my attention." "I'll keep it short," I replied. "The hospital says you're a match. I need the transplant." Silence, then a low chuckle. "And what's in it for me?" There it was, the opening move in a game I'd been waiting 15 years to play. You'll find out, I said, and hung up. Adam didn't call back right away. I didn't expect him to. He's the kind of man who likes to let people stew in uncertainty. It's how he's always kept control. 15 years hadn't dulled that habit. 3 days later, his number lit up my phone while I was sorting through a stack of unpaid medical bills. I let it ring twice before answering, not because I was playing hard to get, but because I didn't want him to hear the eagerness in my voice. Control is a fragile currency, and I couldn't afford to spend any. I've thought about your situation, he began, skipping any pretense of small talk. And I'm willing to help, but only under certain conditions. There it was, the hook in the bait. What conditions? I asked, my voice flat. I want something in return, something only you can give me. I didn't flinch. Go on. I know you've been running your little consultancy all these years. I also know you've been in touch with some of my old clients. He let the accusation hang there like smoke in the air. I want your word that you'll step away, permanently. No more poaching, no more undercutting. You disappear from the industry completely. I almost laughed. Disappearing was exactly what he'd wanted me to do all those years ago. And here he was, asking for it again, this time dressed up as a life-saving favor. That's it? I asked, knowing full well there'd be more. That's the main thing, he said. The rest we'll discuss in person. In person? I repeated. Of course, this isn't the kind of deal we make over the phone. I'll have my driver pick you up tomorrow at 10. He hung up without waiting for my response. Lisa was in the doorway, her arms folded. So, what's the price? Too early to tell, I said, slipping the phone into my pocket. But he's already overplayed his hand. How? If he wants me gone from the industry, it means I'm still a threat, and threats have leverage. That night, I didn't sleep much. I went through old files on my laptop, contracts, correspondence, quiet little details I'd kept over the years without even realizing why. The truth was, I'd never fully severed the tie between us. I had contacts who still owed me favors. I had information Adam wouldn't want made public. And now, I had something else. A deadline. The next morning, I dressed the way I used to when I sat in the boardroom. Clean suit, polished shoes, tie knotted sharp. I wanted him to see the man he'd tried to erase, not the patient hooked up to IVs. At exactly 10, a black car pulled up in front of my house. The driver stepped out, said nothing, and opened the rear door. Adam was waiting for me in a private room at an upscale hotel, the kind of place that smells faintly of leather and money. He stood as I entered, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. You clean up well for a dying man, he said. I met his gaze. Let's talk terms. Adam didn't offer me a seat right away. It was his old dominance game, make you stand, make you feel like you don't belong until he decides you do. I didn't give him the satisfaction of shifting on my feet. I just waited, letting the silence stretch. Finally, he gestured to the chair opposite him. Sit. We have business to discuss. I lowered myself into the chair, keeping my movements calm and deliberate. Across the table, Adam rested his elbows on the polished wood, his gold watch catching the light. You already know my first condition, he said. You disappear from the industry, permanently. I nodded once, not committing to anything. Second, he continued, I want you to sign over the rights to the consulting software you've been developing. I've seen it. You've been clever, Michael. Too clever. That tool is valuable, and I don't want it in your hands. There it was, a glimpse of the real reason behind this meeting. It wasn't about helping me, it was about stripping me of anything that could give me power again. That's a lot to ask for someone's life, I said evenly. Adam smiled. Oh, I'm not done. He leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. Third, I want a public statement from you, something that clears the air about what happened all those years ago. You'll say I did nothing wrong, that you left by choice, that the rumors about me were lies. My jaw tightened, but I kept my face neutral. You want me to rewrite history? I want you to correct it, he replied smoothly. I didn't respond right away. I let my gaze wander to the window, where the city stretched out in sharp lines and glass towers. 15 years ago, we'd both been on top of that world. Then he'd pushed me out, and I'd spent every day since proving to myself I didn't need it. But maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe I did need it. Not for the money, not for the status, but for closure. I turned back to him. That's quite a list. Adam shrugged. Your choice, little brother. Sign the papers, make the statement, hand over the software, and I'll give you what you need. Refuse, and you can take your chances with the donor registry. I let the weight of his words hang between us. To anyone else, it might have sounded like a death sentence. But to me, it was confirmation that Adam still saw me as someone worth neutralizing. I'll think about it, I said, rising from the chair. He raised an eyebrow. Think fast, my time isn't cheap. I leaned down just enough for him to see the steel in my eyes. Neither is mine. Without another word, I walked out of that hotel room. My pulse was steady, my mind already working through the angles. Adam thought he had me cornered, but what he didn't know was that the very conditions he'd laid out had just given me the blueprint for his undoing. By the time I stepped out of the hotel, the cool morning air felt sharper than it should have. Not because of the temperature, but because I'd just been handed the perfect excuse to finish something I should have finished 15 years ago. Adam wanted me out of the industry, my software in his hands, and my name bent into a public apology. In his mind, that was leverage. In reality, it was a map to exactly what mattered most to him. I spent the next 48 hours in silence, moving through the city like a shadow. No calls to Adam, no visible pushback. Instead, I reached out to the people who had never stopped picking up the phone for me, people Adam didn't even know I was still in touch with. First was Peter, an old project manager who'd left the family business after Adam took over. He now ran a mid-size firm that, coincidentally, handled a good portion of Adam's back-end operations. We met at a quiet diner, the kind with vinyl booths and coffee that's been sitting in the pot too long. I always knew this day would come, Peter said after I explained the situation. What do you need? Information, I replied. Specifically, where Adam's vulnerable. Peter grinned. Oh, I have a list. Next was Marissa, a former client whose contract Adam had stolen from me years ago. She'd stayed cordial with him out of convenience, but her loyalty had always been to the people who actually got the work done. Over lunch, I asked her a single question. If you had to bet your business on one person, me or Adam, who would you choose? You, she said without hesitation. Every time. I didn't need flattery. I needed commitment. Then I'm going to ask for something soon. When I do, I'll need you ready. She didn't ask for details. That's the thing about trust. You either have it or you don't. By the end of the second day, I'd reactivated a network Adam assumed was dead. It wasn't about poaching his clients or sabotaging his systems. Not yet. It was about tightening the noose slowly, so that by the time he realized what was happening, his options were already gone. Lisa watched me from across the living room that night, her eyes searching mine. You're not just going to let him dictate the terms, are you? No, I said simply. I'm going to make him think I am. That was the key, letting Adam believe he was pulling the strings, right up until the moment he realized he'd been dancing to my tune all along. The next morning, I called him. My voice was measured, almost resigned. I've considered your terms, I told him. Let's meet again. He didn't hide his satisfaction. That's more like it. Tomorrow, same place. I hung up, a slow smile pulling at my mouth. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. Adam was already seated when I arrived at the hotel the next morning. This time, he didn't bother with the power play of making me stand. He gestured toward the chair as if we were two businessmen about to finalize a merger. I'm glad you came to your senses, he said, leaning back with the smug ease of a man who believed the game was already over. I kept my tone calm. You made your terms clear. I'm ready to discuss how we move forward. He smirked. That's the spirit. I reached into my briefcase and slid a manila folder across the table. Inside were printouts, mock drafts of transfer documents for the software I'd developed, along with a preliminary non-compete agreement. They weren't legally binding. In fact, they were strategically incomplete, missing clauses that would make them enforceable. But Adam didn't know that. He flipped through them, nodding as though each page was another rung in the ladder to his victory. Looks like you've been busy. I wanted to show good faith, I said. If this is going to happen, I want it to happen quickly. We don't have the luxury of time. Adam's eyes glinted. Exactly. The sooner we wrap this up, the sooner you can get on with whatever's left for you. I ignored the jab. There's one more thing, I said, lowering my voice as if I were letting him in on a secret. I've been approached by a few of your competitors over the years. I kept those conversations to myself, out of respect. His smirk faltered for half a second. I'll give you those contacts, I continued, along with notes on what they were looking for. That way, you can stay ahead of them. Consider it part of the deal. Now, his interest was genuine. Adam thrived on control, and the idea of having insider information on his rivals was bait too tempting to ignore. That would be valuable, he admitted. I leaned back, making a show of being weary but cooperative. If we can finalize everything this week, I'll make sure you have what you need before the procedure. Adam tapped the folder with one manicured finger. We'll finalize it, but I'll need you to make that public statement sooner rather than later. Optics are important. Of course, I said, keeping my face neutral. I'll draft something for your approval. We shook hands. His grip was firm, confident. Mine was steady, unshaken. He thought I was handing him the keys to the kingdom. What I was really doing was giving him enough rope to weave his own noose. As I walked out of the hotel, I could almost feel his ego swelling behind me. He believed I was desperate, cornered, willing to trade away everything for a chance at survival. He was wrong. Because survival wasn't the only thing I was after. The moment I left the hotel, I didn't go home. I went straight to a quiet office I kept across town. A small rented space above an old print shop. No name on the door, no trace of it linked to me publicly. It was where I stored the kind of files you don't keep on a work laptop or cloud server. Inside, I powered up an encrypted hard drive and opened folders I hadn't touched in years. Contracts, emails, scanned signatures, payment records. Every scrap of paper Adam thought he'd buried when he pushed me out. I wasn't looking for proof of what he'd done to me. That was ancient history. I was looking for patterns, deals he'd made, clauses he'd ignored, handshakes he'd never honored. The kind of things that, if presented to the right people, could turn trust into suspicion overnight. By mid-afternoon, I had 3 separate threads. A supplier agreement that had been quietly breached, opening the door to a lawsuit. An internal memo showing Adam approved expenses that had nothing to do with company operations, expenses tied directly to his personal life. And a dormant contract clause that could strip him of a key partnership if certain conditions were proven to have been violated. Individually, they were problems. Together, they were a loaded weapon. I made copies, not digital ones, paper sealed in envelopes. I delivered them by hand to 3 people I trusted implicitly, Peter, Marissa, and a lawyer named Collins, who'd once gone toe-to-toe with Adam and won. Each got the same instruction: hold on to this. If you hear from me saying the word green light, you know what to do. By evening, I was back home. Lisa was at the kitchen table, working on her laptop. She looked up. Progress. I poured myself a glass of water before answering. He's convinced I'm giving him everything he wants. By the time he realizes what I've really been doing, he'll be too busy trying to save his own skin to worry about mine. She studied me for a long moment. And what if he backs out? What if he refuses the transplant at the last second? I met her gaze. Then I used the other thing I've been holding on to. Her brow furrowed. Which is? I smiled faintly. Leverage only works if it's bigger than the deal on the table. He wants my software, my silence, and my disappearance. But there's one thing Adam values more than all of that combined: his reputation. And I've been protecting it for years without him knowing. Lisa sat back, realization dawning in her eyes. Tomorrow, I continued, I give him just enough to believe I'm all in. The rest stays in my pocket until the exact moment I need it. Outside, the city lights flickered on, one by one. Somewhere across town, Adam was probably toasting to his victory. Let him. The higher a man climbs on his own arrogance, the further he has to fall. The next meeting with Adam wasn't at the hotel. This time, he invited me to his office, the same top-floor space that used to be mine. Walking through those glass doors felt like stepping into a parallel life, one where I'd never been pushed out, never had to start over. The receptionist smiled politely, but her eyes darted toward the security guard standing nearby. Adam hadn't forgotten who I was. He'd just rewritten the narrative to suit him. When I stepped into his office, he was already behind his desk, framed by a skyline view that screamed power. "Michael," he said, standing just enough to be polite. "Glad you could make it. Let's wrap this up." I sat down without waiting to be offered. That's why I'm here. On the table between us, I placed 2 documents. The first was the public statement he wanted, carefully worded to make him look clean, but subtle enough to leave space for doubt in anyone reading between the lines. The second was the transfer agreement for my software, missing only a final signature. He picked up the statement first, scanning it with the satisfaction of a man who believes history is finally bending in his favor. "This will do nicely," he said. Then he turned to the transfer agreement, flipping through it without realizing the clauses I deliberately left vague. It looked binding to him, but to any decent lawyer, it was little more than a prop. "Once these are signed," I said, "we move forward with the medical arrangements immediately. No delays." "Of course," he replied smoothly. "I'll have my legal team finalize everything by the end of the week." I leaned forward slightly. "End of the week is too late. I've already arranged for a slot at the hospital. If we don't lock this down before then, the opportunity disappears." Adam's eyes narrowed. "You're in more of a hurry than I thought." I let a faint smirk show. Dying tends to do that to a man. He chuckled, shaking his head. Fine. Tomorrow morning, bring the signed originals, we'll close the deal, and head straight to the hospital for final tests. I nodded, masking the surge of adrenaline that pulsed through me. This was it. The timeline was set. By this time tomorrow, Adam would believe he had won. As I left the office, I glanced once over my shoulder. He was already on the phone, probably calling his lawyer, maybe even planning how he'd integrate my software into his empire. Let him dream. Back in the car, I texted 3 words to Peter, Marissa, and Collins. Green light, tomorrow. Lisa was waiting at home. When I told her the plan, she didn't flinch. You've got one shot at this, she said quietly. I know, I replied, and I've been aiming for 15 years. That night, I lay in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow wasn't just about survival. It was about closing a chapter that had defined too much of my life. Adam thought tomorrow would be the day he secured everything he wanted from me. He had no idea it would be the day he lost everything. Morning came cold and grey, the kind of weather that feels like the world is holding its breath. Lisa drove me to Adam's office. I told her she didn't have to come in, but she insisted on waiting nearby. If this goes wrong, she'd said, I'm not letting you walk out alone. I walked through those glass doors one last time, the receptionist avoiding my eyes now. Adam was already in the conference room, the table set like a stage, documents neatly stacked, pens aligned, glasses of water waiting. Right on time, he said, his grin sharp. Let's make this official. We sat. The air between us was thick, but Adam seemed relaxed, almost casual. He slid the final versions of the documents toward me. Everything's in order. Your statement, your software transfer, the non-compete, all ready for your signature. I flipped through them page by page, nodding as if I were checking for small details. In reality, I'd already memorized every word. His legal team had tightened some of the clauses, but it didn't matter. They couldn't tighten what they didn't know was already hollow. When I reached the last page, I set the pen down. Before I sign, there's one thing I want to say. Adam leaned back, smirking. Go on. I've spent 15 years wondering why you did what you did, why you took the company, lied to our family, dragged my name through the mud, and I've realized it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what happens after this. He grinned wider. And after this, you get your transplant, I get peace of mind, and everyone moves on. I met his eyes. Not exactly. From my briefcase, I pulled out 3 sealed envelopes and set them on the table. Copies of documents currently in the hands of people you do business with. Internal memos, contract breaches, personal expense authorizations. You know the kind of thing I'm talking about. His smile faltered. What is this? This, I said calmly, is my insurance. If you back out of the transplant, if you try to twist this deal in your favor after today, these envelopes get opened. The contents go to every partner, client, and investor you have left. Adam's jaw tightened. You think you can threaten me? I cut him off. I'm not threatening you. I'm making sure we understand each other. You save my life. We sign what needs to be signed, and I walk away quietly. You try to play me again, and I take everything from you without lifting a finger. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The only sound was the hum of the HVAC ray and the faint ticking of the wall clock. Then, slowly, he reached for the pen. You've grown teeth, little brother, he muttered, signing his name. I signed mine. The air shifted, the kind of shift you feel when the last move of a game has been made, and both players know it. When we shook hands, his grip was tight, almost crushing. But this time, I didn't just match it, I owned it. The surgery was scheduled 2 days later. The hospital room was cold, sterile, humming with the sound of monitors and ventilation. Adam arrived late, wearing a tailored tracksuit and sunglasses. Like this was just another casual appointment in his calendar. You ready for this? He asked, smirking from the doorway. I didn't answer. I just nodded. My energy was low, a mix of the illness and the weight of the moment. But my mind was razor sharp. The hours that followed were a blur of paperwork, prep, and anesthesia. I drifted in and out of awareness, catching glimpses of ceiling tiles and masked faces. When I finally woke in recovery, my body felt heavier, but somehow steadier. The nurse told me the procedure had gone well. Adam was already gone. No goodbye, no check-in, just his part done, his ego satisfied. And that was fine. I didn't need anything more from him physically. What came next had nothing to do with bone marrow. 2 weeks into recovery, I was sitting on my porch when my phone buzzed. It was Peter. It's done, he said simply. What's done? I asked, though I already knew. Green light. Collins dropped the first packet with the supplier. Marissa delivered the second to your brother's biggest client. The third went to the regulatory board this morning. I leaned back in my chair, feeling the sun on my face. And his reaction? Peter chuckled. Let's just say the phones haven't stopped ringing over there. Contracts are under review. Clients are spooked. And he's calling everyone, trying to figure out where it came from. I smiled, slow and controlled. And no one's telling him. Not a word. By the end of that week, Adam's perfect facade had cracks wide enough for the whole city to see. One partnership dissolved. 2 major clients suspended their contracts pending investigation. Investors started whispering about leadership changes. I didn't need to watch it happen to feel the impact. I'd planted the seeds, and my network had watered them to perfection. Lisa sat beside me on the porch one evening, her hand finding mine. Does it feel like enough? She asked softly. I thought about it, about the years I'd spent in Adam's shadow, the humiliation, the quiet rage, about the day I learned my life depended on the man I least trusted. It's not about enough, I said finally. It's about balance. He took something from me 15 years ago, and today, I took something back. A week later, a plain envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 5 words scrawled in thick, angry ink. You'll regret this. Life. Adam. I read it twice, then tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Because the truth was, I wouldn't regret it. Not now, not ever. Adam had saved my life, and in doing so, he'd given me the strength and the time to destroy the very empire he'd stolen from me. Quietly, completely, and without a single ounce of mercy.